This hangout is live. Konnichiwa, bitches. Welcome to the Week 4 edition of the Ultimate Men's League podcast. My name is Doug, and I'm your commissioner, joined as always by Connor Hemian. Connor, how are you?
Hey, Cardinals are still screwing up, but at least I got a touchdown on David Johnson. That's all I could ask for with that offense.
At least you got the touchdown out of David Johnson, indeed. It's better. Cowboys can't figure out how to score a touchdown, but that's a conversation for another time. This week on the show, we have your Week 3 recap, another edition of the Power Rankings, as well as a look ahead to Week 4, answering all your questions as we go. Please submit them on the UML Facebook chat, not on the live chat feature on YouTube. So without further ado, I shall put on my screen share. All right. So Week 3 is in the books, Connor. Really low-scoring week overall. Some good NFL football, not so much in terms of UML games. Why don't we go ahead and start with one of the shocking stories early in the season. Pat falls to 0-3 despite a good showing against a really good suck my ditka team. What worked well for Steve in this one?
He had Matt Ryan playing New Orleans. That definitely getting 40 points really seals the deal. That and Smith-Schuster apparently is he's had 3 straight 100-yard games if that's correct. He seems to be on fire. Christian McCaffrey seems to have been the better choice. I think that second pick in the draft this year really made a statement for Steve. Not that Dalvin Cook I don't think is going to be a bust, but he's hurt right now, and just the way it worked out, Christian McCaffrey really gives his team a big boost right now. He's just got guys at every position. Cameron Brate finally showed up. You couldn't really ask for more. Trubisky is still a bum, getting 5 points down there.
5 points.
But he's got pieces everywhere.
Yeah, that is a good team. Is Pat hitting the panic button yet?
He's hitting the panic button, but it sucks to see what happened this week. I think he put up a significantly better week than he had the first 2 weeks. His team kind of arrived a little bit more, and it's also a shame to see a guy who's playing the waiver wire so well. He got 12 points out of Ryan Grant, 25 out of Tyler Boyd. That was a great pickup. He's got smart decision making on his part in the waiver wire. It's a shame that he couldn't put it together this week. There was a moment where I kind of thought he did. Going into that Monday night game, it looked like he had a real shot. But 0-3 is where he's at, and that's definitely not good.
Yeah, definitely not the spot you want to be in if you are Mr. Mulvihill. Moving on to your game, Connor, the Pain Train versus the Fozzie fullbacks. Fullbacks get back on track with a no-doubter here against the Pain Trains. Without spending too much time on your own team, how worried should Alex be?
Apparently he's not very worried because his situation is not improving with the waiver wire each week. He still had a bench spot free. You got to pick somebody up with that. He's got a Pittsburgh running back that's clearly not even the backup right now. I think Ridley is getting carries over him. You got to drop those kind of players.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, the free spots what really kills me. That's you never know what could happen. Who could go down with an injury? Who could really show their full potential suddenly? There's gems in the waiver wire every week. There always is.
He's picking first this week, so this is a critical week.
Yeah, he's got to change this. In this score, 118, that's with having Giovanni Bernard be the unquestioned starter that he's not going to have for much longer.
Mm-hmm.
George Kittle's now got a serious decline in quarterback play. It's not going to get better necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got to fix it, and he's not, and he's just going to keep being the lowest scorer in the league.
Yeah, a couple of roster moves, just minor ones even. Make a trade with Blake Bortles, get a wide receiver from somebody. Carlo needs a quarterback and has a million wide receivers. There you go, right? Drop Jalen Samuels. You can probably drop Terrell Pryor and Cole Beasley if there's guys you like better. And then you got to claim Duke Johnson or one of these guys. Like, you have the number 1 waiver claim. You have to take advantage of it. You can't let that sit, or you're going to be wearing that toilet seat next August, guys. But the fullbacks back on track after getting trounced by the Penguins last week. White Sharks, D's Nates, Adam, which we'll get to here in just a second here. But Nate put up a really rough week. What's going on with him?
Yeah, it's just an unfortunate thing here. This team just didn't come together. He had Philip Lindsay acting like a bum, throwing punches. Gets 2 points out of that. You never see that kind of thing coming. His wide receiver play was still good, but everything else kind of fell apart. New England had that, kind of scratch your head game that they always have at one point in the season, and they get trounced by somebody. This happened to be Detroit this year, and Robert Gronkowski suffered because of it. Case Keenum, really rough outing. He just had so many things. I mean, he had Kirk Cousins going up against Buffalo. You would have thought that was a slam dunk, and instead it was a huge disaster. So, it's just I don't think this is the kind of points he'll be putting up regularly. I think he just had so much bad luck falling into his lap this week.
Cool. Adam's team looking a lot better, even at the quarterback position. Carson Wentz comes back. Didn't really have a great fantasy game, but he looked like Carson Wentz on the field, which was good. The running back production was mostly good. Rex Burkhead wasn't great in that Detroit game. Robert Woods was everywhere at the Battle for LA game. Is this a better White Sharks team than what we've seen in the past, or what's the scoop here?
I think it's just kind of luck of the draw right now. Rex Burkhead looks like he's going to be obsolete. So he's got 2 running backs right now. I mean, Jamal Williams is a plug-in, I guess, but he's looking thin at running back if Burkhead either isn't what he's supposed to be. I think Sony Michel clearly shows that he's going to be taking over the backfield duties, and he's also just so injury prone. He already left the game again with some sort of neck issue, I think. He's got the quarterbacks. He's always going to put steady point production. He's never going to be on the bottom in terms of the points, but he just still doesn't really have the right pieces. He got left out with Robert Woods getting 33 points, and Adrian Peterson is showing to be a good player this season, but I just see so many holes mixed in there that yes, he's going to put up points. I think he's going to be more towards 500 than some people might think, but it's just he's not doing anything to better himself anywhere but quarterback, and that's the big issue from what I had last week was that he picked up a 4th quarterback, put himself in a situation, and now Ryan Fitzpatrick just threw 3 picks in one game and lost the game, and Winston's a totally talented and capable quarterback, and what has Adam decided to do but drop a starting quarterback that has no risk of losing his job in Mariota free for somebody else to go and grab now? It's just kind of a real bizarre choice that I just don't understand. I think if he was going to pick him up, he should have known that he was going to have a trade ready to go. And the fact that he didn't capitalize on that, or that he offered up Mariota when he was injured, who's going to want that? He should have been selling Ryan Fitzpatrick on the high note that he's having before a game like this, where now people probably don't even want him anymore. Yeah, it's a real head scratcher for me.
Yeah. Beyond that, though, he does have great defense, great kicker. He's got pretty much all the ancillary pieces that you want on a good team, but he doesn't have that meat and potatoes. He needs to keep.
He doesn't have the punch.
Yeah, he needs some studs, and trading one of these quarterbacks could be a way to get it. And Tim, we'll get to your question when we get to the game previews. Penguins versus Joes. Now, I was sitting with Joe on the way to the Rams game, and he was getting killed. And 5 minutes later, he came storming back. But at the end of the day, the Penguins were just too much for him, despite losing Jimmy Garoppolo. Is Joe's team just kind of mediocre like it's been, or like where's the arrow pointing for the Broadway Joes?
Joe's team kind of reminds me of yours a little bit, where if he can get Watson and Fuller dynamite, he's gonna win. Obviously, they had a great game with each other there this week, but with Watson and Fuller and Gurley, there's going to be a lot of weeks where people can't keep up with that if they have huge games. And I think he's got pieces that, unlike Adam, kind of like an opposite side of the spectrum, he's got guys that can put up crazy points at multiple positions. His tight ends are a lot better than they were for him last year with the trade with me, and with keeping Eric Ebron. It's actually seeming like it's not that bad of a pickup anymore, even though he kept him really high in the draft. And I mean, look on his bench. Dallas Goedert has arrived with Wentz behind center, and that's his tight ends just improved that much more. And with Baker Mayfield coming into the lineup now, he's got I think he's got a real good shot at significantly going up with his point totals and winning a lot more games. I think
Yeah.
he just get it all to fall together this week.
This is what I mean. It still kind of feels like a rebuilding team a little bit, but those are make those end of season moves, get Kyle Rudolph on your team, and now Dallas Goedert looks good. He can probably cut bait on Eric Ebron next year, or trade him, or do something. So it's definitely a good move there. Tim has been diligent on the waiver wire. That Jimmy Garoppolo trade is a killer, though.
Yeah, kind of like the
Or
unfortunate
injury, I should say. Sorry, not trade.
unfortunate kind of aspect for Tim is he kind of like flopped with Joe. Joe just got Baker Mayfield, and now he just lost Jimmy Garoppolo. It's a real bummer. And hopefully Leonard Fournette's going to be coming back soon. He's got some potential with Josh Gordon there on the bench. He's still got all those wide receivers. Tavon Austin apparently may be a big part of Dallas's offense. I mean, they don't have much of one, but he seems to be the one part of it. Nelson Aguilar is also taking a hit with Wentz back. It looks like Wentz loves his tight ends more, and especially with what's his name coming back?
Alshon Jeffrey.
Alshon Jeffrey coming back too. Aguilar may be kind of taking a back seat now. We'll see what happens there, but it looks a little concerning.
He's got the receivers to cover for that, though. Nelson Aguilar is not going to bury his team.
That's true. But I mean, he was probably his best wide receiver right now. Well, besides Galladay. But yeah, I think it does take a significant hit with Jimmy G. He needs Leonard Fournette back in his lineup, but I do think his team is really playing well, and I think that there more wins will come.
Yeah, definitely went a little sideways at the draft. Not the way you expect a team to draft, but seems like he might have nailed it. Rabbit College Rampage 158, Cleve Wellington 125. Is Carlo hitting the panic button?
Yeah, he's got to hit the panic button. His wide receivers just aren't enough. He's still going to be one of those super dangerous teams. You never want to play him. But right now, he's kind of looking like he's going to be the guy that spoils the party for somebody else rather than propels himself into a good situation with his lineup right now. His running back play is just not looking good. He still has nothing, no real answer at quarterback. Eli Manning had a decent week this week, but it's rough. He really needs Jameis Winston to end up being the starter, I think, to make a impact later in the season. And yeah, it's just not enough. Those wide receivers just can't do it. He needs to find other routes and other means to have the success he found last season.
Yeah, it does look like he's got a chance to improve his lot at quarterback this week. He's at the third waiver claim, and there are 2 starting quarterbacks available at minimum. So he's got a shot there. Alex is one of the teams in front of him. He can't claim a quarterback. I wouldn't hate. Carlos got to grab one of those guys. Really, he really just has. If he can get Marcus Mariota on this team, it could change a lot of his fortunes. On the other side of the ball, the Rabbit College Rampage looks like he might have hit on a running back here with Kerryon Johnson. The Lions' first 100-yard rusher since Thanksgiving of 2013.
2013.
That is wild. Was it Reggie Bush back then who did it? Good grief. What's the story with Rampage?
Well, that's not the only guy that kind of blew up this week. Calvin Ridley looked pretty good last week. I know it'll be kind of up and down for him most likely with
Well, that's his best game of the season. Surprise, surprise.
Julio Jones is here still. It's not like he's going to be the number one option, but I think he shows that he can kind of be more of like a Detroit situation where they have Galladay and Jones and Tate. I think he can kind of fall into that with Atlanta, and I think he could have some really nice games, 20-point games scattered throughout the rest of the season. I could totally believe that. He looks very good. He's going to get Alshon Jeffrey back, maybe not this week, but soon. And Mixon's on the horizon. He will end up getting him back. His running backs are a little worrisome, having to start Blunt and Wendell Smallwood, which he's not going to get again next week, most likely. But I think he's still got some really great pieces. He's still got Hopkins, He lost out on Tyrod Taylor, but Ryan Tannehill's looking fantastic this year for the Dolphins, and Cam Newton's Cam Newton. So I think he's still got a pretty rock solid roster, and he knows what to do on the waiver wire. So I think his team's definitely needed this win very badly, but I mean he can kind of breathe a little bit after this win, and he can just go to 500 next week if he manages to win.
Yeah, and then we can forget all about that 0-2 start. The one quick thing on Calvin Ridley, he had as many touchdowns Sunday against the Saints as Julio Jones had all of last season.
Well, there you go. Maybe that's the answer for the red zone. That they
there you go. Man, Bear, Pig, 159. Cookie Snatchers, 129. Flash in the pan or cause for pause?
I mean, it's twice now that AJ's put up enough points to win. I mean, it's still not as impressive as the 183. You know, Barkley's proving to be a great pick. Marshawn Lynch has been great. Buck Allen has been great. I know you were a big hater of that pick, and I was not too thrilled with it, but it looks like he's proven us wrong there. And, you know, he's still got the right pieces. Anunwa, even you could say, had a bad game because of the situation. That could improve, and he could get even more points out of his wide receivers there that are looking pretty steady. I'm still worried about his bench. I think he could still do a lot more there, but he's going to be able to plug in Josh Allen now with Joe Flacco kind of slowly getting less and less points. I think he's declined in each of his games as the season's gone on, which, you know, is also could just be by the opponent, but he's not as, you know, if Josh Allen's going to put up the kind of games he put up against one of the best defenses in the league, I think he's definitely a fantasy stud, possibly for the rest of the season if he can control himself and the Bills don't ruin him. But yeah, I think he's less of it shouldn't be as much of a shock as it's been. It's just because of the history of what AJ's team's been, but I really think he's turned it around quite a bit these past two seasons, and I think he's definitely in contention for the playoffs. You know, he's 2-1, and he's put up quite a few points. He's probably fifth or sixth in scoring right now,
and he's booked a couple of wins against some decent teams as well. Last game was, we won't have to spend a whole lot of time on this one. Muppets 121, Trippers 144. What happened in this game to the old Muppets?
They got tripped, Doug. I thought you said you were doing the tripping.
I meant a different kind of tripping.
and Doug, what happened? Last podcast, you said how much you love Mike Williams, and I said, well, why isn't he starting for you? And you never started him. It would have been a lot better score for you this week.
So. Yeah, I meant to too. Joe and I were talking about it because it was my only player on either of the teams that we were going to see. So I was like, it'd be nice to root for someone, and then I just completely forgot about it. Wouldn't have affected the result, but it would have felt good to start my young receiver when he has 2 touchdowns. But the Trippers kind of got really got a good draw this week. The 144, not one of Kevin's better weeks, but still got a win. And he's not going to put up 144 that many times. So one of the few times that he does.
Looking like Drew Brees, just like my dad's an old man playing a young guy. Drew Brees, the old man, wanted to show up Mahomes at least once this season, and he put up that 40-point performance.
Yeah, Mahomes is a savage, but Drew Brees is a Hall of Famer. Moving on to the reason everybody's watching, listening, whatever it is that they're doing, the power rankings. Let's go ahead and get to the right screen here. It's really just top-notch stuff here. So we see last week's power rankings. Let me just make sure we did all the games. We did all the games, right? Oh, no. Yeah, we did. Okay. Yeah. Last week's power rankings there on the right. This week's will be on the left. Connor, who comes in at number 14 and why?
Yeah, number 14 for me for the third straight week, it's the Pain Train.
Ouch.
Lowest point totals in the league. I mean, leaving free bench spots open. He's not showing that he's going to improve his situation, and he just continues to put up these bad weeks. And until I see anything otherwise, he's going to stay at the bottom.
One roster move that would greatly improve this team. What is it?
Duke Johnson, probably number one. Or I'd have to look at the waiver. I haven't really looked just yet. But I'd say Duke Johnson's probably the first thing because his running backs especially with Anderson on bye this week. He's going to need something in there.
Yeah, definitely has to happen. Who comes in at number 13?
At number 13, it's really sad because I was saying how he was going to be rising and rising and rising, and he just fell down a little bit again. It's Steve Nate's, the 1-2 record there, and the fact that he had his scoring hasn't been enough for me to put him a little higher at the moment. You know, I'd put this fall as kind of bad luck rather than team management. He has picked up, like we said multiple weeks now, he's picked up a lot of guys and made a lot of moves. He's already adjusted his lineup, which I love to see. Already getting ready for next week. And apparently the Cardinals D pickup, he said how that looked a little questionable. Hey, they got 8 points out of it. That was
Yeah.
terrible. So he's smart on the waiver wire. That's the big thing. He's playing aggressive. He's grabbing the guys he wants whenever the people falter or don't check or don't bother to put in a claim. He's the one scooping it up, and it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, 13 acquisitions among the highest in the league. Who comes in at number 12?
Number 12 for me is the White Sharks still, even though they put up quite a bit of points this week.
Moved up a spot.
They did move up a spot. I can't ignore the point total. I just hope, after the weird, bizarre waiver wire things going on last week, I hope he really kind of sets his mind right. I mean, he just dropped a starting quarterback that's potential for top 20. Depending on his health, he could even be a little bit higher. I mean, he puts up points when he plays well, or when he plays, not when he plays well. Obviously, he makes points that way. But, and I don't really see the right kind of acquisitions yet, like Nate's been doing. I don't really see anything in the starting lineup that he didn't already have before.
Well, he did kill Nate last week, for what that's worth.
True. But, when the buys hit, it's like a whole nother ball game. And that's where we're going to see Adam not put up as high of scores anymore.
We shall see.
If he changes it, get on the waiver wire, Adam.
Yeah, you're picking towards the top again. And it's always good to stay active. And number 11.
Number 11. Oh my. Do I dare say it? I'm gonna put. Well, you know what? Before him, I'm gonna have to go with Pat just because he's 0-3. I liked what I saw this week, but unfortunately, he's 0-3, and he's still got some question marks. He's hopefully maybe going to get Freeman back this week. Maybe. Sony Michel, I think, is definitely the big time back here for New England now. I think that they're definitely going to be handing the ball more. They just had the misfortune of kind of getting outsmarted by Detroit, which is amazing to say. But I think on a given week where they have better control of the game, Sony Michel is a guy I think that could put up a lot more points. Jordy Nelson has shown new life. He's got that Tyler Boyd pickup, and if my poor AJ Green decides he wants to skip a week, that's another probably stud play. He's like Nate. He plays the waiver wire, and he plays the waiver wire well. But 0-3, he's just got to go this far. I'm sorry, Pat.
Yeah. I love the idea of this team picking up Marcus Mariota. He's got the second waiver claim, and he could really use a flex this week. I think that would be a great move for him. Do not waste a claim on a kicker. What's that?
And he's got to win this game.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more when we get into the previews. Who comes in at number 10?
His opponent coming up in the preview, Queef Wellington. He's dropping.
Wow.
Hard.
Queef Wellington, what is the deal here? Those receivers can't hold him up anymore?
He's gonna get his wins, but he's got to learn something here. I gotta kind of smack him on the butt here, and be a parent. He's got to fix this roster. He hasn't really done anything. He picked up Josh Adams. He didn't play. He played with Sean McCoy when he was out. I know that was not really necessarily his fault. He was on the road, but his lineup could be better. He could do more. He needs to be making trades. This is something with me last season when I realized I was in trouble with all my injuries. I had to go out and I had to make a trade. There's a point where you realize something has to get done. And when you have somebody with that many great wide receivers, I know wide receivers aren't one of the hotter positions to want to trade for, but I mean he's got the best ones. He's got to get something of value. Maybe get a solid running back 2, and some kind of lesser wide receiver, or maybe one of the lower seeded quarterbacks that maybe he'd get a deal worked out with that. Do like kind of a 2-for-1, anything like that with one of these stud wide receivers he has, and boom, instantly a lot of those holes are gone. So much better of a roster. He just hasn't really changed his outlook, and if he doesn't change it, he's gonna be with a losing record like he has been right now with 1-2.
Yeah, definitely not a good spot to be in for Queef Wellington. Who do you have coming in at number 9?
Number 9, this is where it was starting to get real tough. Number 9, I'm going to have to go with Doug Sr. just because of the record. And this is where, if he wins this next game, he's going to really skyrocket. But I mean, he's like I talked about with the game recap. He's got the pieces to really make some noise in this league. He needs to win this week with Cam Newton on bye. If he can do that and showcase that he has the bench depth, that's going to tell you how the rest of the weeks with buys are going to go for him. And I think that's where he can really catch up and come back into the fold. And I think he's going to do that. I think he's definitely still a playoff team. He's got the pieces. He's got the savviness. He's got Kerryon Johnson and Calvin Ridley breaking out. But with his record, he's still got a little ways to go.
Nice. Coming in at number 8.
Number 8. I'm going to have to put you here, Doug.
Ouch. Down 3 spots after one bum week.
Yes.
That's cold.
To make an example.
Start Mike Williams.
And that's that Tyreek Hill had a bad week, and your team stopped putting up points. KC is both your saving grace and your crutch, and they even had a pretty good week. I mean, Mahomes looked fantastic still. Kareem Hunt got in there, but if they're not blowing teams away and putting up crazy points, your team isn't doing what it looked like it could do at the start of the season. When you went 2-0, you looked pretty formidable, and after that week, it kind of like showed a little bit of your holes there, and that's that KC judges your wins or losses. And while I think you're going to be a super dangerous team and you're definitely in the playoff mix for sure, that is a bit worrisome. And hopefully one of those Tennessee backs goes down. That would be good for you probably. Putting in Mike Williams in your starting lineup, Doug, sheesh.
Hey, he's in there.
But yeah, I mean, if Rashad Penny could show he's better than Chris Carson like he didn't do last week, Hayden Hurst may be coming back healthy to take out Jake Butt because he's kind of been struggling a little bit. He's doing okay, but I mean, I think you're still in position where you're going to climb back up. I think this might be the lowest I have you for a few more weeks now, but it is a little scary. You did really jump down in points this week.
Yeah, dang old Muppets, man. Number 7, the team that is going to win the first pick tournament.
This is going to be the Broadway Joes.
The Broadway Joes. You mean that team that's going to get stomped this week by the Murder Muppets?
Oh boy, we'll see. Maybe you will go a little bit lower, Doug. We'll see. Yeah, I put him here because you gotta love the Todd Gurley, Watson, Fuller mix, and now he's got Baker Mayfield. I think that's super exciting. Going up against Oakland will be a good test for him. I could see him getting a lot of points. Dallas Goedert with the Wentz offense looks like a stud. Kyle Rudolph still making his way, getting points. Alfred Morris now has the backfield for a little while to himself. How severe was Brady's injury?
I actually didn't hear anything about Brady's injury.
I heard something about out for the year, and then that stopped instantly, and I don't think he's that hurt anymore. What's the deal with him?
Hyperextended right knee.
So that's like 4 weeks, probably?
It depends, really. It's one of those nagging injuries, but nevertheless, it's a good thing for Joe's fantasy prospects, even if it's obviously you don't root for guys to get hurt, but
Absolutely. And he's been playing the waiver wire. Jackson kind of fell apart a little bit this week, but we'll see what happens there. But he's been playing the waiver wire successfully, and he's been putting up a lot of points. I think he's seventh or sixth in scoring right now. So I think his team's a little dangerous right now. It's more put together than I think we were expecting.
Yeah. Good on you, Joe. And we're left with the final 6 playoff teams. Who's that 6th seed, Connor?
I'm going to give it up to Tim here.
Up 3 spots from 9 last week.
He's up in his point totals pretty steadily. He's got a lot of good pieces. Hyde's turning out to be a good player. Fournette. He was savvy and picked up Taven Austin, which, like I just see right here on his lineup, he's already plugged him in at running back, which is great, even though he's pretty much a wide receiver. That's a sneaky, cool thing to plug in. And of course, he has the wide receivers, from the draft we talked about all the time. His tight ends scare me a little bit, especially with Hurst on the mend. But I think he's got some really cool pieces that give him a lot of depth. Right now, as soon as he lost, Garoppolo for the year, he's already plugging in a wide receiver that can get pretty good amount of points. I think Chris Godwin had 16 points last week, So, he's got pieces that can plug in where they need to go. And I think he's going to be a pretty rock-solid team. I think it's definitely, just like Joe, 2 teams that were kind of sort of in the rebuilding stage that should be really happy with the progress right now.
Yeah, Tim had a question. Bears defense against the Bucs, start them or sit them? This is an interesting sort of question because the Bucs have been really good on offense this year, and you don't want to drop the Bears. So do you maybe take your medicine here and just hope that Fitzpatrick implodes again, or do you drop the Bears and pick up another defense, or do you carry 2 defenses this 1 week? What are you doing here, Connor?
I think, well, with Tampa Bay against the Bears, the unfortunate thing is I don't think the Bears defense is the problem. It's more of the fact that if Trubisky is in a shootout with the Tampa Bay offense, I don't know that he can, go arm for arm with Fitzpatrick, unfortunately. So that could really keep the defense on the field a lot more, getting a lot more worn down. So I do think it is a tough matchup. I wouldn't ideally like to play them, but I think his team really needs to add pieces like, if Mariota were able to fall to him. I don't know if he'll be there for Tim, but, at least even the backup quarterback for San Francisco, just so he has 2. I think he needs to be more concerned with those kind of pickups first. I would put in another claim for a defense somewhere down on my claims after those important positional pieces. And if you happen to get them, carry 2 defenses. If you happen to get the guy that was the role player you wanted, plug the Bears defense in. It can't be too catastrophic. That's how I would play it. If it falls into your lap, use it. But go for those positional players first.
Yeah, definitely good advice. And Tim, maybe reach out to Alex and see if he can give you Blake Bortles for one of these receivers that you've got. Not a bad way to go there either. Up next on the power rankings, number 5.
AJ's climbing back in.
You've had AJ all over the place on these power rankings.
I don't know what to do with him. He's confusing me. 1 week I think, it looks like it's all falling apart. And the next week I think he's got a rock steady team. Barkley, Lynch, Allen are proven to be out of the league, one of the better running back cores right now. I think they've all put up at least 10 points in each game so far this season. He's got Josh Allen coming off the bench now, looking like could be a really, I don't know still about his future in the NFL as a real player, but for fantasy wise, he definitely showcases a lot of upside. You definitely want him in your lineup. He's just going to get you random fantasy points. I could see 30-point games like he had this past week quite often, possibly, depending on how he uses his feet. Eckler's turning out to be a really great bench position for running back. He still needs some extra pieces on his bench. I'm still not in love with that. I think he needs to do a lot more work there. I see that he's got the Panthers defense on bye, so that's another Tim situation. Well, they're on bye this time, but
yeah, I'm not carrying that.
Carry the Panthers defense. I don't know that you do. Especially with that game against Atlanta. That was rough. But yeah, do something with your bench and see how long you can ride out the success of Lynch and Buck Allen, and he could keep putting up points. I mean, he's very high on the board for scoring overall, and yeah, maybe next week will be 10 for me. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it's just up and down each week.
Top 4.
For the top 4, I have Ray falling down to 4 after hitting the top 3. I still think he's I think these top 4 teams are very on level with each other. I think any given week he can recorrect. He had a bad week this week, but it happens to everybody. Chris Carson looks a lot better. Mark Ingram's going to be coming back. Sterling Shepard's a nice piece. Christian Kirk looked like he had some fun with Rosen towards the end of there. He got 16 points last week. We'll see how that connection works out. I mean, he's still got Big Ben, and he's still got Russell Wilson. Are they in bad positions some weeks? Yes. Big Ben on the road is kind of a different kind of player, and Russell Wilson's really struggling with Seattle, but they're still going to put up big-time points in certain games. And his running backs with James Conner and Tevin Coleman, Bilal Powell, and Chris Carson and Mark Ingram, as I said, that's a really nice running back core. And he's got Stephon Diggs and Michael Thomas to go with that. So his team is, to me, it's almost a lock for the playoffs. And I think he's going to have better weeks than what he had last week.
We do have a question from Ray. He wants to know who you'd start, Bilal Powell or Chris Carson? Bilal Powell at the Jaguars, Chris Carson at the Cardinals. I'm starting Carson here. Just the Cardinals are second in points allowed to opposing running backs. Running backs have done pretty well against the Cardinals, and meanwhile, the Jaguars are the 9th toughest defense against running backs. So I'm going to say start Chris Carson. What are your thoughts, Connor?
I'm going to totally agree with you. And I mean, we've even seen Cleveland's defense, was kind of a bit similar to what Jacksonville's probably going to do. I think he's going to have, a mildly decent stat line because I think Sam Darnold's going to be overwhelmed with Jacksonville's secondary. But I think Carson has way more upside going up against the Arizona D, as you said. So, yeah, I think it may be a little closer than it looks. I don't know if Chris Carson could exactly replicate what he did to Dallas, but I think he's got a chance for 15-plus points.
Yeah, if I'm betting on one of these guys to score a touchdown, I'm betting on Carson, not Powell.
Yes,
and
especially with Grohl.
And I think that would be the difference there. So there's your answer for you, Ray. Number 3.
Number 3, got to give it up to Steve. Another good outing this week.
Up one spot from last week.
He's real close to me on most total points. Back off, Steve. Cut it out. Yeah, I mean, he's still holding on to Ronald Jones. I don't, as much as I don't like to see people keep a guy that gets 0 points consecutively, he is a high draft pick. Maybe we'll see him at some point this season. But I think he's like I said, he's in the past he's picked up Naeem Hines, he's picked up Geronimo Allison. He actually listened to our advice last week, Doug, and picked back up Mike Gesicki.
Yeah.
I think his team looks really great. Evan Ingram out is definitely going to sting a little bit, but honestly, his involvement with the offense hasn't been quite what he was used to anyway. If he can find the right kind of tight end on the waiver wire, or if Gesicki can kind of fall into it, he already had an improvement in this past game, although small. I think he's just got so many great players. Now with if Braid is not able to go, he can plug in Hines. He's got pieces to plug in wherever you look, and I think it's a really rock solid team that puts up a lot of points. Matt Ryan's having a great year. McCaffrey's having a great year. Howard's having a great year. He's got a lot of great pieces. Juju's on fire. Yeah, I think he's going to be scoring a lot of points for weeks to come.
Real quick thing, Steve, you don't need to carry 2 defenses, and you certainly do not want to start the Broncos against the Chiefs. So go ahead and put the Rams in there on Thursday night against the Vikings. Vikings did not look great against Buffalo. And you could probably just drop the Broncos outright. Looks like you got some injuries. You're probably gonna need that spot anyway. So that would be one roster move. And don't feel bad about dropping Ronald Jones. The opportunity cost at this point is getting to be a little outrageous. Number 2 and number 1.
Number 2, still me. I think I really rebounded this past week. I still have the most total points scored. And I think my roster is one of the deeper in the league. Just hoping I plug in the right guys, I don't put in Sam Darnold to get me 2 points, and I don't have a kicker that gets 0 points. That was really unfortunate. So I think I could have had a much higher point total if I had adjusted things a little bit better. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see if Cardinals can improve, and we'll go from there.
All right. The Toad Point Trippers, the number 1 team in the league in your view, and Le'Veon Bell has still not reported to Pittsburgh. This is what we see every year from Kev Dog. Gets off to a strong start and then gets some bad luck in the playoffs. Is this going to happen again this year? Or is this team just built to last?
Well, I can tell you right now, if the reports are true and Le'Veon Bell is on the market now and he goes and signs with another team, definitely would significantly improve my dad's team that much more. But yeah, I mean, he said he's got depth. I think out of everyone in the league, he probably has the greatest depth. Maybe a couple teams can match him. But, with Drew Brees looking like he's going to have a record-breaking year and a lot of the other pieces really filling in nicely, I think my dad's already seen a lot of struggle. And if things improve from this point on, it's only going to be better for him. And I just think he's proven 3-0, one of the higher scoring teams in the league. He can face adversity. We'll see how long for.
Yeah, he can probably drop CJ Process, right?
Well, he had catches last week. Dallas sucked so bad they didn't have to use him.
All right. Well, going into the week 4 previews, you've got Joe, you've got Doug. Choose.
I'm gonna. I think this is a really good game. I think both of your teams are similar in construct with the quarterback wide receiver combo that can be very high scoring. I think it's going to be a real nail biter. It's going to be real close. And I think I'm going to give the edge to you, Doug.
That's right. Muppets.
I like the KC matchup against Denver, and I really think Indianapolis isn't as bad as people think. It will be a shootout, so it's going to be close. It's going to be very close.
Yeah,
I think both your projected totals are far too low as well. I think you guys are going to put up a lot more points than what's shown for the projected total. But I think it's going to be a high-scoring, high-octane game, just like the offenses you guys like to be a part of.
Awesome. Sounds great. Moving on to the next game, we've got the Sharks. We've got the Trippers. Is Kev Dog going to pick up the L this week?
No, I think he's still going to put it together like he does. I think Breeze against Giants is going to be a juicy matchup. Peyton Barber honestly kind of had a better game. We'll see. Well, actually, no, he didn't. I only saw the first drive for him, so he actually had a pretty crappy game. So Peyton Barber's still a problem for my dad. But I think, with James White, I think he's proven to be a good piece. Corey Clement, if he can get another week with the Jai banged up, we'll see if that happens. But either way, he's still got Antonio Brown. He's got Sanders. He's got Hilton. And he's got Breeze. And I think that right there is enough, especially with Adrian Peterson on bye for the White Sharks. I think that's enough for my dad to get the win.
Yeah, definitely. I think going to be kind of close here. You see the projection line is at 10, and obviously Peterson's not in there, so Kev Dog should be on his guard. But I think he's got the horses to pull him across the finish line here. Let's see here. Rampage versus Cookie Snatchers. Rampage don't have a tight. Or was that an OP put in yet, and are projected to lose by 25. The old man needs this one. Is he going to get it?
Oh man, it'd be a huge statement if he could tie up with Ray in the standings. His team does have some potential to do that, but he's got no Cam this week, and we don't know how healthy Ajayi is going to be. So that's a real stinker for him. Kerryon Johnson against Dallas, well, I'm sure he'll do just fine when our offense decides not to go anywhere and the defense suffers. But I think Ray's going to turn it around. It's going to be really unfortunate for Doug Sr., and he's going to unfortunately have to fall back to 1-3 and still be right on the line of playoff or no playoffs. But I think it'll be a good game. It's unfortunate that Cam Newton can't be a part of it. I think it would definitely give your dad a bit more of a chance. But I see Ray on the rebound here.
Yeah, definitely a game to watch, but I think Ray will get the job done and put the old man back on life support going into week 5. Man Bear Pig versus Ditka. Possible game of the week. What's going to happen here? Is Steve going to get that first L of the season?
Well, he's got McCaffrey on bye and Bradis questionable. That could really put something into works for AJ. Like I said, Barkley, Lynch, and Allen have really been on a great page with the way his running backs have been going. I think it's going to be real close for Steve. I think he's going to have some trouble because of the injuries and the bye week for him. I think it's going to be a nail biter, and I'm still going to go with Steve just because I think it's really going to be an up and down week for AJ each time. So I'm going with odd weeks and even weeks, and unfortunately for AJ, in my weird decision, he's going to lose.
Yeah, this game's a little bit of a coin flip, and I'll go with AJ just because he has his best player. Steve doesn't.
I think AJ needs this win more than Steve needs it.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens, see what they do in the waiver wire, but that one's going to be really, really tight. Pain Train, Penguins, choose.
I'm going to go with the Penguins. Even with the loss.
These projections are ridiculous, by the way.
Yeah, it's very too. I mean, we'll see what Alex can do with his running back situation. If he can add Duke Johnson, I don't know if it'll help him that much, but I think it'll be definitely somebody actually play at running back for him. With Amari Cooper still not showing up after maybe it looked like he was finally on pace with Carr, and with Kittle's loss of Garoppolo, there's just a lot of really big holes. Giovanni Bernard could have a good game at Atlanta, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to stop the influx of points that Tim can pull off with all of those players. I mean, if Fournette's healthy, Carlos Hyde, all of his wide receivers, they're going to put up a lot of points, as well as Stafford against Dallas. I'm sure he'll do very well. Yeah, I'm going to take your brother here. I think it's the projection total is completely wrong. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with the Penguins here. The Pain Train have a lot more questions than they do answers. However, we are due for a Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers both going off in the same week type of situation. So if that happens, then Tim's going to be in a lot of trouble. D's Nates, Fozzie fullbacks, choose. And yes, Tim, you should start Chris Godwin if you can't make a move to get a quarterback for that OP.
Yeah, I've got me. Even if Dalvin Cook plays, they're going against the Rams. Actually, the Rams allow a lot more run game. I think just on purpose to like a spider trap. But I mean, he also has Kirk Cousins there, so I think Minnesota against its Rams is definitely not good for him when those are his best players. Yeah, I think I've got this one. I think there's still a lot of bad luck heading Nate's way, and he's going to take a couple weeks to correct. And I don't think he's doing it this week.
Yeah.
I think I've got it pretty handily.
I would agree. Nate, hang in there, though, buddy. And for this week's game of the week, two losing teams. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Two losing. We were talking about it in the other segments, and I was like, yeah, you know what? This actually is really interesting. Is this a loser goes home kind of game?
It could be. Very well could be. Yeah, I think it is, and it's going to be I think it could go one of two ways. It's going to be very close, and Pat's going to edge it out, or like it can happen and has happened in the past, his wide receivers, Carlos' wide receivers, are going to put up so many points that it's going to be a blowout. And that's just how Carlos' team is. It's either a blowout or he loses. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think I'm going to go with Carlo just because of those wide receivers. I'm going to take the risk. But yeah, I think whoever loses, it's going to be a sad day for them, I think.
Yeah, this is not a game where you can afford to lose. I'm gonna also go with Carlo. I think those receivers are some of the best players. If Devonta Freeman plays and Pat scoops up Marcus Mariota, maybe it makes me feel a little differently. He's also got to change out his kicker, but this is not a good spot for Pat to be in 0-3 against the reigning champion. Is that the end of the previews?
I believe so.
I believe so. Guys, if you didn't already notice, I did finally post the draft board to the league page, so feel free to make all of your trades. If you need, if you have any questions about rules or anything, always feel free to reach out to myself or Connor. Let me go ahead and turn off my screen share. Cool. Connor, is there anything you want to add before we get out of here?
No, just everybody have another good week. Just not as good as me.
That's right. Yeah, lots of high scores for everybody but Joe this week. All right. Guys, until next time, Konichiwa, bitches.